البلد خرجت في فلسطين. فأرادوا تهجيرنا، إحنا رفضنا الهجرة، فأجوا قتلوا شباب 2 من بلدنا مشان يعملوا إرهاب على أساس الناس تطلب الهجرة، فإحنا برضو رفضنا الهجرة. والشعب الفلسطيني ناضل وكافح وشرد وأهين، وفي النهاية ثمان دول عربية على أساس إنه يساندونا، وكانت مهمة الدول العربية هي تسليم الأراضي لإسرائيل. كانت مهمة الدول العربية تسليم الأراضي لإسرائيل. فكان لما تهجيرنا جابوا سيارات حملوا السكان بالقوة، نزل من السيارات اليهودية في السيارات الأردنية، وجينا هنا وجدنا المخيم منصوب عنا.
هلك لوراء، هلك والله وخرجونا 2.
نعم، الخيام كانت منصوبة عنا، كانت المي من تحتينا تجري. حطينا نتش فوق المية، ومن فوق النتش نحط شادر وننام فوق الشادر، والمية تجري من تحتينا. كان محل المخيم هذا مزروع كرسن وجلبانة، واحنا كنا فوق المية، ننام فوق المية. ولما سنتها اجى الثلوج صعب جدا، طار الخيام. استؤجر المخيم لمدة 99 عاما، وهذا كان يعني عادة الاستئجار. مكثنا على هذا الحال بال55. بنى الوكالة بدأ سنة 1955. كمان مرحلة بنوا باقي المخيم على أساس إنه ما يخلوا خيام في المنطقة. اللي كانت في الأول، أول ما كان الأجرة يعطونا 2 كيلو طحين للنفر، للي بيشتغل يعني. إلهاء يعني إلهاء.
يحاولوا ينسوكوا يعني.
نعم، يحاولوا ينسونا عن البلد وعن الأرض وعن انسحبت الأردن من فلسطين في 6/6/1967 انسحبت الأردن من هنا وحلت إسرائيل مكانها. الآن بعد عام 67 وقفوا توزيع التمويل. يعني إذا كان إحنا ناسبونا بالناس، إحنا معيشتنا متدنية، هذه عندنا مقومات الحياة يعني، لأنه لا أرض لنا ولا مصدر رزق ولا عمل إلا عمل الإجر. إحنا عندنا محلها الغرفة فقط. يعني هنا وإحنا قاعدين نخش الجندي الإسرائيلي بياخذنا وبيطالب.
عادي. بعدين عندك السنوات الأخيرة قامت وكالة الغرف وتشغيل لاجئين تقليص هاي الخدمات، بطلوا يقدموا خدمات صحية، بطلوا يقدموا تعليم، يعني قدامنا
لإنهاء القضية.
لإنهاء قضية اللاجئين.
لإنهاء القضية يعني.
ظلوا موجودين بالمخيمات.
فكل ما الوكالة ارتفعت عنا كل ما ساء مستوى المعيشة. في النهاية لا حياة لنا ولا عيش لنا إلا بالعودة إلى وطننا تحت أي ظرف كان، وسيأتي يوم اللي نعود إلى وطننا.
Thanks so much. So before jumping to the respondents, I just wanted maybe that you finish your thought about, that you started briefly, about why bring these two spatial political configurations into comparison. And I guess for me, as you might have figured from my biography, I'm from Puerto Rico, which is another space. And when I started watching it, just even before thinking about the specifics, something that struck me immediately was there's an aesthetics to coloniality, if you will. If you go from New York to Miami to Puerto Rico, you start feeling you're getting closer to it. If you go from New York, California, Hawaii, Guam, you get closer to it. So why these two specific spaces and not favelas, unincorporated territories, other spaces?
Well, it's because, in part, there's obviously a shared history that informs the Palestinian situation and the American situation, or the native situation here. And then there's also a kind of a sovereignty that's both juridical and not juridical that exists within the Palestinian refugee camp, especially in Lebanon. You're seeing how the Lebanese army doesn't come in. And then as well with reservations, it's different, obviously, from reservation to reservation, but there's also kind of varying kinds of sovereignty in relation to the state, in relation to the federal government, that we found interesting. So it's partly because of the shared history, and then also partly because of the quasi-autonomy, if you will, of these spaces. And then another thing is there's a certain visibility to these spaces as well. Native people in general are kind of very much historicized in America and not thought of in a contemporary sense, much less on a reservation. And then similarly, I think the Palestinian refugee has been marginalized
Malik,
within
can you bring the...
Sorry.
You can't hear.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now? Were you hearing me before? Or? Okay. Similarly, there's a kind of a marginality to the Palestinian refugee experience, especially in the last 20, 25 years, where the focus has really shifted to the West Bank and Gaza. I think the Palestinian refugee and the Palestinian refugee camp has been kind of forgotten or made invisible. And I'm Lebanese as well, so I can testify to that from personal. As an American, I can testify to it, and as a Lebanese, I can testify in both instances. So,
Matt, you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of people have made this comparison to both Native Americans and Palestinians as having experienced a certain form of settler colonialism. But I think what was interesting for us, in particular, was to look at the camp and the reservation specifically as a form of embodiment or kind of a continuity of how this is embodied or still exists. So we wanted to focus with our project specifically on the camp and the reservation. So not just about Palestinians or Native Americans, in New York City, for example, but to go, the main part of our project was to go directly to the camps and to the reservations and see them as these spaces of exceptionality that kind of exist within nation states. They exist within borders, but they have some kind of contested relationship to them. In the case of like the Mohawk, for example, or many reservations, they would deny, in fact, that they're part of the United States or Canada. They would consider them sovereign nations. And in the case of the refugee camps, there's a kind of different dynamic. But yeah, as Malik was saying, within Lebanon, the camps somehow are not part of Lebanon. The Lebanese state, the police, the army is not allowed to go in. So there is an interesting, actually, kind of exceptional situation there. In many cases, they're not citizens of the countries they're in as refugees. So in the case of the Native Americans, they were kind of, citizenship was just bestowed on them or given to them. They didn't apply for it or anything. They were just, oh, now you're citizens, in 1924. And they're like, well, we didn't ask to become citizens, So there's an interesting dynamic between the citizen and the refugee, as the guy in our video and the Mohawk talks about the nation versus the people, a citizen versus a human. If a refugee is not a citizen, how does it access human rights, which are typically kind of thought of as between citizens, between states, kind of dealt with. So there's a lot of these questions, to look at these exceptional spaces as a way to open up questions for us to think about the nation state or sovereignty, even for ourselves who are not Palestinian or Native American, but we felt like to look at these two situations could really kind of explode different ideas about what sovereignty or what the nation state is, because they still exist.
Okay, so on that note, I wonder, Nidal and Audra can...
Thank you so much. Actually, yes, we can see like a lot of common things between Native Americans and Palestinian